The bizarre rituals of Opus Dei you don't know about. Did you know that a Catholic organization, supported by popes and with members worldwide, practices rituals that seem like something out of a thriller? Welcome to the secret side of Opus Dei, an institution that blends faith, power, and practices that will shock you. Today, we'll delve into this organization's little-known rituals, revealing what happens behind closed doors and exploring why these practices generate so much controversy. You've heard of Opus Dei, right? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but I guarantee you'll never look at this organization the same way again. Let's start with the basics. What is Opus Dei? Founded in 1928 by José María Escrivá, a Spanish priest, Opus Dei, or Work of God, is a Catholic institution that preaches sanctification through everyday work. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But don't be fooled. Beneath this message lies a world of strict rules, intense rituals, and influence that reaches the highest levels of society. Opus Dei has about 90,000 members in over 70 countries, including Brazil. They're divided into categories: numeraries, who live in celibacy and lead an almost monastic life, supernumeraries who can marry, and associates, who also take a vow of chastity but live outside the organization's centers. So far it sounds like a typical religious group, right? But here's where things get weird. Let's address the elephant in the room, the rituals of corporal mortification. Yes, you heard that right. Some Opus Dei members practice self-flagellation and use instruments that cause physical discomfort as a way to get closer to God. One of these instruments is the cilice, a metal band with spikes that's strapped to the thigh for up to 2 hours a day. No, this isn't fiction from Dan Brown. It's real, and there's more. Another ritual involves the discipline, a small whip made of knotted cords that members use to strike their backs or buttocks, usually once a week while praying. The idea is to imitate the suffering of Jesus Christ. According to Opus Dei, these practices are voluntary and cause only mild discomfort. But former members tell a different story. Imagine this. You're an 18-year-old full of dreams, and someone invites you to a spiritual retreat. Sounds amazing, right? Well-dressed, intelligent people treating you like you're special, but slowly you realize you're being pulled into a world where every detail of your life is controlled. That's the story of many former Opus Dei members. A former Brazilian numerary, Antonio Carlos Brolezzi, shared in an interview with Epoca magazine that he joined the organization thinking he was signing up for an astronomy course. Instead, he was bombarded with messages about divine vocation and pressure to become a numerary. He says the organization created an artificial vocation crisis, making young people believe they were chosen by God. Sounds like manipulation. To many, it does. Now let's talk about how Opus Dei recruits its members. They don't knock on your door like Jehovah's Witnesses. The process is much more subtle, almost like a dance. It starts with friendship, an invitation to a cultural event, a dinner, a chat about spirituality. Slowly they pull you in, making you feel part of something bigger. Critics call this love bombing. But here's the most controversial part. According to allegations, Opus Dei has tried to recruit teenagers, even though its statutes prohibit formal membership for those under 18. A 2024 Financial Times article revealed that former members accuse the organization of pressuring youths as young as 14 and a half to become junior candidates. These teens were encouraged to write letters requesting admission, a process called whistling. The organization denies any pressure, but the stories are consistent. Have you ever thought about what it means to give up everything for a cause? In Opus Dei, numeraries, who are the backbone of the organization, do exactly that. They live in gender-separated centers, hand over their salaries to the organization, and follow a daily schedule that feels like it's from a medieval monastery. They wake up early, pray, work, pray again, practice mortifications, and often sleep on wooden boards instead of comfortable mattresses. Female numeraries have an extra practice. Some are encouraged to sleep on these boards as a form of mortification. Why only women? A Portuguese Opus Dei spokesperson, Pedro Gil, said this reflects the spiritual generosity of women in the founder's view. But critics argue it reinforces a sexist outlook within the organization. Let's talk about money. Because yes, Opus Dei has a lot of it. It's estimated that the organization's global wealth reaches billions of dollars. But how do they get so much? Simple. Numeraries hand over their salaries, and supernumeraries also contribute financially. Plus, Opus Dei controls, through its members, a network of institutions like schools, universities, and even hospitals. In Brazil, for example, they're linked to elite educational institutions. Here's the catch. Almost nothing is registered in Opus Dei's name. Properties, foundations, assets, everything is managed by members or affiliated entities, making it hard to trace the organization's true financial reach. This fuels theories that Opus Dei wields more power than it reveals. Now, picture being a numerary assistant. These women, often from humble backgrounds, are responsible for domestic tasks in Opus Dei centers. They wash, cook, clean, all while following the same rigorous spiritual practices as other members. A former numerary assistant, Rosidalva Julião, claimed she felt like a slave. She signed salary receipts but never saw the money, which was automatically donated to the organization. Is this sanctification or exploitation? Let's take a step back and talk about the founder, José María Escrivá. Canonized in 2002, he's revered by Opus Dei members, but also a target of criticism. Some describe him as a charismatic man with a revolutionary vision that everyone can be a saint. Others, however, point out that Escrivá practiced extreme mortifications. There are reports that he took pride in leaving bloodstains after using the silica. He saw suffering as a path to holiness. But where's the line between devotion and excess? Have you ever wondered how such a secretive organization gains so much influence? Opus Dei is known for having members in positions of power, politicians, judges, bankers, university professors. In Brazil, names like Geraldo Alckmin have been linked to the organization, though he denies being a member. In Spain, during Francisco Franco's dictatorship, several ministers were tied to Opus Dei. This raises the question, does Opus Dei deliberately seek to influence politics and society? Critics say yes. They claim members are encouraged to take leadership roles to spread the organization's values, but Opus Dei insists its members act independently, with full freedom. Who's right? It's hard to know because the organization is notoriously private. They don't hide their existence, but they don't open their doors to curious outsiders either. Now let's talk about something that shocks many people, the control over members' lives. In Opus Dei, everything is monitored. Your reading, your friendships, even your innermost thoughts. There's a practice called savage sincerity, where numeraries must share everything with their superiors, even their deepest secrets. Hiding something is like keeping a secret with Satan. Heavy, right? There's also a list of banned books and movies. Authors like José Saramago and Essa de Queiroz are blacklisted because their ideas are seen as contrary to Opus Dei's values. Imagine needing permission to read a novel or watch a movie. To many, this feels like censorship. Let's talk about women in Opus Dei. Despite the organization's claim that it values men and women equally, critics argue that women are treated unequally. Numerary assistants, for example, are almost exclusively women and have less prestige within the organization. While men often take leadership roles, women are encouraged to serve in the background. This reflects a traditionalist view that not everyone accepts. Now, a real story that will make you think. A former member named Agustina said that leaving Opus Dei was one of the hardest moments of her life. She spent months being pressured to stay, with leaders telling her she might be rejecting God's will. When she finally left, she described the 30-minute drive back to her parents' house as the happiest of her life. But not everyone is so lucky. Some former members report depression and struggles to reintegrate into society after years of control. Why does Opus Dei spark so much controversy? Part of it comes from its image. Thanks to Dan Brown's book and movie, The Da Vinci Code, many associate Opus Dei with dark secrets and conspiracies. While the organization denies the book's accusations, calling them exaggerated fiction, the reality is that practices like corporal mortification and aggressive recruitment fuel distrust. But it's not all criticism. Many current members passionately defend Opus Dei. For them, the organization offers a clear path to holiness, a tight-knit community, and a greater purpose. They say mortification practices are misunderstood and that the focus is on love for God and service to others. Who's right, the critics or the defenders? Let's talk about Opus Dei's global impact. Beyond its presence in dozens of countries, the organization has close ties to the Vatican. Pope John Paul II was a strong supporter, and Escriva's canonization in 2002 was one of the fastest in church history. This raises suspicions that Opus Dei has disproportionate influence within Catholicism. Some even call them the Pope's army. Is that true? Another practice that stands out is the formation of members. In Opus Dei, education is taken seriously. Numeraries undergo intense training, including classes in theology, philosophy, Latin, and even Spanish. It's like an internal mini-university, as journalist Catarina Guerrero described. But this formation also shapes members' worldview, reinforcing obedience and loyalty to the organization. Now let's address a sensitive topic: leaving Opus Dei. For many, exiting the organization is like leaving a family. Some former members report being ostracized or facing psychological pressure to stay. Others say that after leaving, they felt an immense void because Opus Dei was all they knew. Imagine spending years handing over your salary, following strict rules, and then finding yourself alone in the world, without money or support. Let's talk numbers. While Opus Dei doesn't share exact figures, it's estimated that there are about 800 numeraries in the United States, with similar numbers in other countries. In Brazil, their presence is significant, especially in cities like São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. But membership is declining. Former members report that since the 2000s, there's been a wave of departures, especially after scandals and media criticism. Why do so many people leave? For some, it's the weight of the rules. For others, it's the feeling of being deceived. Many join young, drawn by the promise of a purposeful life, but discover that the reality is far more demanding than they imagined. One former member said that, after 10 years in Opus Dei, he lost 15 kilos and 250,000 reais, which were donated to the organization. Is this vocation or manipulation? Let's talk about Opus Dei's cultural impact. The organization is known for its conservative stance, especially on issues like sexuality and family. They strictly follow Catholic doctrine, condemning extramarital relationships, homosexuality, and condom use. This clashes with an increasingly liberal world, but for members it's simply a matter of fidelity to their faith. Now, a question. Do you think a religious organization should have so much control over its members' lives? In Opus Dei, even friendships are monitored. If you get close to someone outside the organization, you might be questioned. If you read a forbidden book, you could face reprimands. For some, this is spiritual protection. For others, it's a prison. Let's talk about the future of Opus Dei. With declining membership and growing criticism, the organization faces challenges. But they're not standing still. Opus Dei continues to invest in schools, universities, and social projects seeking to attract new members. They also have a strong online presence, with websites and videos showcasing a friendlier side of the organization. But the controversies don't stop. In 2024, the Financial Times published an article alleging that Opus Dei continues to recruit teenagers despite Vatican rules. The organization denied it, but the stories from former members are hard to ignore. Is Opus Dei changing or just trying to polish its image? Let's talk about a specific case in Brazil. In Santana do Parnaíba, São Paulo, there's a site called Aroeira, where numerary assistants make silices and disciplines. Yes, the mortification instruments are crafted by the very women who use them. Is this dedication or something more disturbing? Now, a reflection. What drives someone to submit to these practices? For Opus Dei members, it's a matter of faith. They believe suffering brings them closer to God. But for critics, these practices signal fanaticism. Where's the line between devotion and obsession? Let's talk about Opus Dei's political influence. During Franco's dictatorship in Spain, the organization had close ties to the government. Escrivá even wrote letters praising the dictator. In Peru and Chile, there are also allegations that Opus Dei members supported authoritarian regimes. Does this mean the organization is politically conservative? They say no, but the connections are hard to ignore. Finally, I invite you to reflect. Is Opus Dei a spiritual organization that helps people find meaning in life, or a group that exerts excessive control over its members? The answer isn't simple. There are stories of people who found peace and purpose in Opus Dei, but also tales of trauma and regret. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to follow me here on the channel for more content like this. Leave a like, comment on what you thought, and most importantly, ask your questions. I want to know, what shocked you the most? Do you know someone who's been in Opus Dei? Let's keep this conversation going in the comments.